Last time out, we found that Sonic's story could be completed without running, and if you didn't watch that video, why are you here? I said I might do the rest of the game, and well, here I am. 1 story down, 5 to go, and every character has something that makes them stand out. Tails has his flight, Knuckles has emerald hunting, Gamma has shooting, Amy has unbearably slow gameplay, and Big... yeah, this should be fun. So what are we waiting for? Let's get the rest of this playthrough going with everybody's favourite two-tailed fox, Tails.
Here I come, Sonic!
Tails is a very clever person. Tails is also 8 years old. Tails crashes his plane in the first cutscene. Hey, but we've seen this already. We know Sonic retrieves his corpse and ends up fine. Let's just grab the jet anklet and move on to the Egg Hornet. Despite the fact Tails can't homing attack like Sonic, this is still the first boss, so it's still easy. Just fly around like a maniac until he's ready to be hit. One thing to note for later is that I didn't count Tails' tail attack as running, so I could use that just fine. Now we have to move on to Windy Valley by getting the Windstone again, and this is about as fun as when Sonic had to do it, which, safe to say, isn't very fun. I think it's quite easy to tell that Tails' levels aren't very difficult to do in this challenge since he can fly. With that said, Tails' Windy Valley is nothing compared to the nightmare that was Sonic's version. First off, Tails' stage is only made up of Sonic's last section of Windy Valley, and Tails can literally just fly to the end since he doesn't get tired if you let go of the fly button whilst flying. Flying off the edge at the beginning and just guiding Tails to the end is all this level is. It also exposes how much of a cheater Sonic is in these races. After grabbing the emerald, it's off to the casino back in Station Square, but because Tails is underage or something, he's not allowed to gamble and gets thrown straight into the sewer section. Casinopolis is more difficult than Windy Valley for the simple fact it's a lot more boxed in, especially in these tunnels that bring back some bad memories from Lost World. That being said, this level is still only a minute long, so there's no real issues here. You just have to hope that the doors don't close on you for no reason. Okay, we all know how this goes. You grab the emerald, immediately lose it because Fat Man, grab the ice stone for more amazing gameplay, and gain access to Ice Cap. This is just a snowboarding section of Sonic's level, so I don't think I have to explain why this was the easiest level of the entire run. But after this, we move on to...
Hey, Knuckles! What's up?
Oh, I hate that line! Yeah, it's the Knuckles fight, and we all know how hilariously easy it is, and...
Are you sure about that?
I died. Yeah, this fight was actually one of the most difficult parts of Tails' story. Like I said before, Tails doesn't have a spin dash like Sonic, and I can't just roll into him like you normally would, since that requires running first. My first strategy of just jumping on him wasn't a reliable way of hitting him. Then I remembered Tails can just use his, well, tails to attack, so I just decided to get as close to Knuckles as I could and hit him with a tail attack. 3 oh-no's later and we have to fight Chaos 4 again. It's the same as Sonic's, just flying about, waiting for Chaos to resurface, only for some reason he has less health for Tails' fight, which I never understood. After dealing with Chaos 4, we have to do Sky Chase again, and you know what? I can't be bothered. Shadow, can you give me a hand here?
Chaos Control!
Okay, we're back. Tails crashed the plane, normal order is restored, and we have to find another Chaos Emerald for the Tornado 2. Fortunately, there's one just lying around in the forest. Unfortunately, Froggy gets there first, which means at this point in the story, Froggy has 2 emeralds and a part of Chaos inside him. One session of sand surfing later, we get the frog and are transported into the distant past for story reasons. Whilst in the past, we grab the Rhythm Badge, which allows Tails to do continuous tail attacks. I decided to not count this move as running because look at him, have you ever seen anyone run like this? We get the emerald from Froggy and use it to power the Tornado 2 so we can pick up Sonic and, oh, for God's sake. We know what happens next. It's Skydeck. This is nothing compared to Sonic's counterpart of this stage. It's very open, so Tails can fly past most of the challenges with the exception of this ramp. There are dash pads along the ramp, which obviously cause Tails to run, meaning we have to fly past them and stop sporadically to avoid them. The rest of this level is just flying past or over everything until we get to the capital first. Just like Sonic's story, we have to fight Gamma now, and unlike the Knuckles fight, this is easy because we have the Rhythm Badge, so we can just use Tails like a spinning Beyblade of death to quickly beat Gamma. After beating Gamma, we get Amy and fly off the egg carrier and that Eggman decides to try and blow up Station Square with a missile. Why didn't he do this from the beginning? The missile turns out to be a dud because, of course it does, it's Eggman's. But that means it's a race to the missile to disarm it. It's Tails' final level, Speed Highway. This isn't saying much, but this level caused me the most trouble across Tails' story. It was mostly because I was impatient, and it caused me to be sloppy when I landed after flying. Also, this level is the only one in Tails' run that had sections made just for him, so it makes sense that it caused me a bit more trouble. However, this is still Tails we're talking about here. He can fly, and Eggman never stood a chance. After getting to the missile, we're met with Eggman in the Egg Walker, and he decides to provide one of the very few lines in this game that is delivered well.
Away, before I make mincemeat out of you.
That's some good stuff right there. The Egg Walker. This isn't very difficult. Since we have the rhythm badge, taking out the legs is no problem, and all it takes is a simple jump to damage Eggman. Repeating this a couple times takes him out and in turn completes Tails' story. Now that we're done with Tails' story, I wonder who's next.
Here I come, rougher than the rest of them, the best of them, tougher than leather. You can call me Knuckles. Unlike Sonic, I don't chuckle. I'd rather flex my—
Oh no!
Yes, it's the man who gets it on with himself, Knuckles. Pretty simple rules here. Climbing, gliding, and punching, all allowed, so let's get on with it. Knuckles starts off his story badly by losing a fight to Chaos Zero, and at this point, it should have been pretty obvious how Knuckles went from being a cool, calm, collected warrior to
Meme!
The Master Emerald is broken, so Knuckles sets out to find the pieces starting with the first level, Speed Highway. Just in case you didn't know, the gimmick with Knuckles in this game is treasure hunting, which means each level is kind of like a sandbox. The 3 emerald pieces that you need to find are never in the same location each time you attempt the level. To sum up, each level in this story just consisted of throwing myself in each time and hoping for favourable emerald spawns. And that was really the only challenge because Knuckles has a wide range of movement with his gliding and climbing. You can even use his punching to move a small distance without running. The only issues in Speed Highway were these small passageways which could be a bit awkward, so I just kept resetting the level until emeralds didn't spawn in those places. Other than that, this wasn't too difficult, and that can be applied to most of Knuckles' stages. As whilst they were designed with Knuckles in mind to some extent, they are still small areas that don't take too much time to search. After Speed Highway, Casinopolis is the second stage, and honestly, it's very similar to the first one. This level is mostly vertical, and the emeralds aren't located that far away from each other. Casinopolis is also very open, so there's nothing to obstruct our movement, so grabbing the 3 pieces is no problem at all. Shortly after grabbing those emerald pieces, we run into Eggman, who Knuckles thinks has a piece of the Master Emerald, but it turns out to just be a Chaos Emerald. And I guess because Knuckles was already here, Eggman decides to stick Chaos on him. This fight isn't hard, but I somehow managed to die on my first attempt by brain aneurysm? I don't know what happened here. But yeah, just wait out when he bounces about the place and glide into him when he's open. After beating Chaos, Eggman tries to convince Knuckles that Sonic is actually working against him, which Knuckles believes because he's an idiot. The next stop is Red Mountain, but first we need to grab the shovel claw in order to dig. Also, we need to murder these 2 monkeys. After that, we find ourselves in Red Mountain. Yet again, this is a big open space, and there's not even that much ground to run on here. It's easy, and doesn't take long at all. But I will say it was quite fun just gliding and climbing around the level. Next is the Sonic fight, which just consists of mashing 1 button until we eventually hit Sonic enough times. Oh, it's Chaos 4. And now he's gone. Let's move on. Before heading off to Lost World, I decided to grab Knuckles' Piss Gloves, which allow him to do the Maximum Heat Knuckles attack, which is just Knuckles' version of Sonic's Lightspeed attack. After grabbing the upgrade, we have to gain entry to Lost World by placing 2 stone statues at the temple, and if you haven't already guessed, this was painful. Trying to move 2 objects up a quite large staircase without running up it was the biggest obstacle in Knuckles' entire story. It was made even worse when I found out that they can clip through the staircase and despawn, causing me to start all over again. The best method was to just keep throwing the statues up the stairs and hoping I made progress. After a while, I somehow managed to get both statues to the temple and started Lost World, which was easy. This level is literally just a box, so it takes no time at all to search the entire area. Add in the fact that the emerald pieces aren't that far away from each other, and you have a level that has no roadblocks. After a quick detour to the past, we put the collector pieces back to the Master Emerald and find out the remaining pieces are on the egg carrier. So Knuckles makes his way there by following Gamma, who just happened to be in the area for some reason. Once on the egg carrier, we make our way to the Sky Deck. Remember when I said in Sonic's story that I don't like Sky Deck? Well, I want to apologize to that version of the level because Knuckles' version is even worse. Whose idea was it to make the stage's gimmick be about changing gravity? Because believe it or not, having skewed gravity when controlling a character that glides isn't very fun. In fact, it makes me want to rip my Sorry about that. What I'm trying to say is this level isn't very good, so I reset the level until I had a run where I could ignore the gravity changing as much as I could. Granted, I still needed to change the gravity for the last emerald, but 2 out of 3 ain't bad, I suppose. After Skydeck, we're pulled into the past again for more exposition, and then it's on to Knuckles' final boss, which is Chaos 6. This fight is slightly more difficult than Sonic's variant, but only slightly. You have to be a bit more methodical when hitting the robot, since Knuckles doesn't have a homing attack, and it's a bit risky to do the Maximum Heat Knuckles attack twice, as Knuckles gets locked in place for a few seconds, which could lead to him running. Taking all of this into account, we hit Chaos 6 normally for the first 2 hits, and then use the Maximum Heat Knuckles attack for the third, since it does double the damage to Chaos. Doing this defeats Chaos 6 and allows Knuckles to go back home to Angel Island, completing his story. Okay, who's next? Big the Cat is a character that has no bearing on this game's story. His frog is more important than him, yet you are required to play as Big to beat this game, so Here we go, I guess. It shouldn't be surprising to say that Big doesn't have many options in terms of movement because he's a fat cat voiced by Duke Nukem. So the only way to move is to jump everywhere, and it's safe to say this isn't very effective when there's a low roof. Thankfully, Big's levels barely require any movement as all they entail is fishing for Froggy, and the fishing spot is normally located very close to the starting point. Such is the case for Twinkle Park, as all it takes is a few jumps to the correct position and then some fishing to complete the level. Despite the fact we just caught Froggy, Big lost him. So we need to go to Ice Cap, and you know what that means. We need to get the Ice Stone again, which is always fun. After taking the train and opening the entrance to Ice Cap, we get the life belt and make our way up the ladder at an unbelievably fast speed for an animal of that size. This is a level that actually requires a bit more thought, as the ice is risky to move on because it's ice, it's slippery. So the best course of action is to climb up to this section and cannonball down onto the part of ice that needs to be broken. This opens up the section of water that Froggy is in and means we can easily catch him. Big lost the frog again, because the writers needed an excuse for the story to progress, so off we go on a wild goose chase until we're at Emerald Coast, which isn't difficult, as it's mostly water, and can be easily traversed using the life belt. Big actually manages to hold onto the frog for more than 3 seconds after the level, gets his pocket picked by Gamma, causing Big to follow him onto the egg carrier. But would you look at that? We're already at Big's last level, and someone at Sonic Team must have thought, you know what Big needs? A section of the level that isn't fishing. The opening of this level is a short linear tunnel that leads to the fishing spot. Believe it or not, this takes a while to get through by only jumping, and this ladder can go die in a ditch. After eventually getting through that waste of time, the fishing was pretty standard, with the exception of Froggy not biting at one point, which caused Big to have the appropriate reaction. After catching the frog, Takal thought it was a bright idea to show Big of all people some exposition, even though he has no idea what's going on. After the 4th attempt, Big finally keeps hold of Froggy after a stage and ends up bumping into Eggman and Chaos, which is convenient for them as Froggy not only has a Chaos Emerald in him, he also has Chaos's tail. So Chaos takes Froggy, which leads to a boss fight, and I can't put that phrase in bigger inverted commas even if I tried. Big grabs the frog and decides to hightail it out of there by flying the Crash Tornado 2. I highly doubt Big has the intellect to fly that thing, but who cares, his story's over. Let's move on to Amy. We start off Amy's story with her bumping into a bird and getting chased by a robot named Zero, who is after the bird. Shortly after, we run into Sonic and make our way to Twinkle Park. The good news with Amy is that she only has 3 levels. The bad news is that you have to play as Amy. Like Big, the only way Amy can move without running is by jumping, and god, she is so slow. Normally, the only way you can gain any speed as Amy is by using a hammer jump, which you have to run to be able to do, so that's off the table. So the only option in this playthrough is to go through these quite long levels, slowly inching your way along by jumping whilst also avoiding Zero, who is constantly chasing you through the stage. You're basically playing through Amy's levels in slow motion in this challenge, and because of that, I can't really comment on Twinkle Park because nothing is difficult, it just takes forever. Shortly after, Amy gets captured by Zero and taken to the egg carrier, where she meets E102 Gamma, who decides to free Amy. However, the only way to get out of the cell area is to beat Eggman's high score in Hedgehog Hammer, which is no problem at all. We also get the Warrior Feather upgrade for completing it, which allows Amy to spin around in a circle, which has no use whatsoever. Shortly after this, we make our way to Amy's next stage, Hot Shelter. You know how I said this playthrough will basically be in slow motion? This is what I meant by that. This level is long even when you play it normally. So when you add in the limitations of this run, it becomes offensive how long this takes. I have beaten Werehog levels in Sonic Unleashed quicker than this stage. It is unbelievable how in about 15 minutes of gameplay, so little happens. The only thing worth noting is this jump, and even then, it wasn't difficult to pull off. Everything else in Hot Shelter is just making easy jumps and putting blocks in certain places to open doors. And even then, I somehow managed to fall through platforms, causing me to restart. This was painful, and I'm glad it's over. After a quick trip to the past, we get through some more of the story that we've seen already and head off the egg carrier. I've always found it quite funny how Amy just completely ignores the whole missile crisis that's happening right next to her in this scene.
Ready? Fire!
Meanwhile,
I wonder what Sonic is doing.
Well, since Amy apparently has better things to do than help stop a missile, she decides to help find the bird's family and heads off to Eggman's base to look for them. This leads Amy to our last level, Final Egg. This stage is still like the other two as it mostly consists of jumping everywhere and it takes forever, but it does have an interesting ending section. This is because the game expects you to use Amy's hammer jump to get up this ledge. Obviously, I can't do that, so you might think that the run is over. But we can actually use Zero to help here. Since you take a bit of knockback whenever you get hit, you can position yourself in a way that the robot punches you up to the ledge. This takes a few attempts and feels like dumb luck at times, but it works, and allows us to complete Amy's final egg without running. We didn't find the bird's family, but Amy figures that they're probably on the egg carrier, which means we have to make our way back to it. This is going to take a while.
What a thrill.
Once we get to the egg carrier, we find the bird's family, which means we get a happy family reunion. Until Zero punches it in the face. That seemed to be the final straw for Amy as she decides to take him on. This is Amy's final boss, and it's no problem at all. Just time your jumps correctly to avoid the attacks and hit Zero shortly after he lands. It doesn't take long to push him into the fences 3 times in order to beat the robot and complete Amy's story. Speaking of robots... we're on to the last character-centered story of this game, which is E-102 Gamma, who is a robot that was built by Eggman. As soon as we start Gamma's story, Eggman sends us to the first level for some training, Final Egg. Gamma is an interesting character in a run like this, because with every other level before this, I could go through my levels at my own pace for the most part. However, Gamma's levels include a time limit, which you can only increase by shooting enemies. The higher the combo, the greater the time you add on. This can be a problem since my only movement option to start off with is jumping, which can cause any section that includes a small ceiling to take much longer than normal. Thankfully, Final Egg is a really short level, so it isn't too much of a problem. It doesn't take us long to get to the end and destroy the Sonic doll. Directly after finishing Final Egg, we're thrust into a battle with Gamma's brother, E-101 Beta, to see who will join Eggman's crew on the egg carrier. Gamma's boss fights are laughably bad. You don't even need to move when fighting them normally to beat them, so there's no issue. After beating Beta, we board the egg carrier and are given orders to track down Froggy for the Fat Doctor. This leads us to Emerald Coast, which, very much like Final Egg, is no real issue due to its short length. This means it takes no time at all to make our way through the level and grab the frog. And straight after grabbing the frog, we're taken to the past for some more exposition. To Carl, showing this to a robot makes no sense at all, but at least we get a good line from it.
This presents a problem.
After that waste of time, we reconvene with Eggman to hand over the frog and are ordered to get the bird that Amy has, but not before Gamma sees his brother being taken apart right in front of him. How does Gamma respond to this traumatic event?
This is the wrong room.
We quickly watch a scene we saw earlier in Amy's story where Gamma lets her escape, and move on to grab an upgrade which makes this run infinitely more interesting as Gamma, the Jet Booster. The Jet Booster lets Gamma float in the air, allowing us to gain a lot more ground when jumping. Shortly after grabbing the Jet Booster, we're ordered to go to the rear of the ship to fight Sonic. Sonic the Hedgehog! Versus... Gamma! Again! Yeah, Gamma wins. Amy talks some sense into the robot after the fight and we make our way off the crashing egg carrier. Amy's words must have got to Gamma as he decides to turn his back on Eggman and venture off to save his robot brothers. It just so happens that Gamma's definition of save is blow them up. The first of the robots is located in Windy Valley, which means we have to grab the Windstone again. Thankfully, since we have the Jet Booster, this doesn't take nearly as much time as before, as we can float over to the level's entrance. Now that we have the Jet Booster, Gamma's levels become a lot more manageable, as we can maximize our time spent off the ground to make more progress through the level. Because of this, Windy Valley is easy to clear with the exception of 2 tunnels with very low ceilings that just need to be brute forced through. Other than that, making it to E-103 Delta is easy, and beating him is even easier. Look, I don't even have to move. Now that we've saved Delta, we move straight onto the next level, which is Red Mountain. Honestly, this level was really fun to play in this challenge. Large parts of this level are either open or located on a slope, meaning that you can skip over level design by choosing the correct times to activate and deactivate the Jet Booster. And this was quite satisfying to pull off. It's like how satisfying it is to skip level design with the spin dash from playing as Sonic. The only problem here is a long tunnel that Sonic Team thought was necessary to put in every Gamma level for some reason. It takes a while to get through, but it leads directly to E-104 Epsilon, who puts up a bit more of a fight than usual because I didn't position myself correctly. Still though, it's a Gamma boss fight. It's not hard. 2 robots saved, 2 to go. And Gamma reckons that the best place to search is the crashed egg carrier. Once he gets there, he locates E-105 Zeta in the hot shelter. Anyone who has played this game will know that this is probably the only Gamma stage where you risk running out of time, and that's purely because the level is designed to be a bit slower than others. It is the only stage that Sonic doesn't visit. We already know this. We spent 15 minutes here with Amy. With that in mind, I needed to try and cut some corners to save time. The first section involves some platforming which can be avoided with the Jet Booster. After this, there's a part where you have to wait for a bridge to move, which wastes some time. Thankfully, some of the environment doesn't have any hit detection, and so it can be clipped through. This means we can avoid the bridge altogether and get past the door. Unfortunately, what lies past this door threatens the whole run. There's a straight vertical slope that you're supposed to use dash pads to go up, and Gamma is not able to jump high enough to clear it.
This presents a problem.
To put it very simply, this is impossible to do without running. I tried. I really did, but it simply isn't feasible. And even if I did find a way past it, there's another vertical slope straight after it, which is even bigger. I even tried to jet boost it out of bounds to slowly glide over to the end of the level, but everything I tried led to me undershooting it and landing below where the platform for the boss fight is. This left me with no choice but to just accept that it wasn't possible, so I used the dash pads to go up the slope. That is obviously disappointing, but I'm going to soldier on and try to beat the rest of the game anyway. Now, just because I have to run up the slope doesn't mean I can't use it to my advantage. Using the airtime from the slope along with the jet booster means we can skip the second slope that I talked about earlier. From here, we can clear the chain section easily and move on to the final section before the boss. The only problem here is that there's a large slope just before the boss area, which yet again requires dash pads to get past. Thankfully, we enter this area from above, meaning we can take our time gliding down and carefully make it into the opening that leads to the boss. Once again, the boss is no problem and can be taken out by just mashing the fire button. There's only one other E-Series robot left to save, and luckily he shows up just in time to fight. The final boss for Gamma is E101 Beta Mark II. This is the only boss that's worthy of being called a boss in Gamma's story, as you can't just spam fire until you win. You're supposed to dodge his charge attack and get a hit in after it, but since it's quite difficult to do without running, I just brute forced it. So long as I shoot the missiles before he charges at me, I could reliably trade hits and just grab a ring to tank through the rest of the fight. I was able to use the jet booster to avoid most of its attacks, except the last round where he just goes crazy. It was best to just take the hit than risk running at any point. After clearing another set of attacks, we get one more hit in to finish the fight.
Hey, you wanna see something cool?
Beta decided he was going to take Gamma with him, and after a short meeting with a bird, Gamma gets a taste of his own medicine and blows up, ending his story. All 6 stories have been completed, but as you all know, this game has a final story. Let's just get to the point here. We all know the final story is just some cutscenes in the boss fight. It goes without saying that the hub world sections are no problem. I do take a quick shortcut off a cliff at one point though. Angel Island falls, Chaos is back, he beats up Eggman and Knuckles, he gets all the Chaos Emeralds, he drowns an entire city, power of friendship, Sonic wins. There's not much more I can say. Perfect Chaos as a fight isn't possible without running. It's just not. It's a supersonic fight, and I know that has different connotations now with the release of Frontiers, but the only thing you can do in this fight is hold forward to win. You can't even spin dash. It might be a bit anticlimactic, but Perfect Chaos is defeated and the day is saved. Chaos and Takar go back to the Master Emerald, and everyone is left to ponder on the state of the city.
All's well that ends well, right?
Tails, the entire city is underwater. Thousands of people are dead. With that, the game's over. I know I technically failed this challenge, but I'm happy. I should clarify that I didn't even know this was possible when I began. And to go through the entire game and have only 2 instances where you have to run is fascinating to me. Sonic Adventure is a game where in all but 1 level and 1 boss, running is optional. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I wish you a wonderful day. See ya.